on the 19th of November and centres on the theme of supporting men and boys, encouraging all Australians to recognise those making a difference from the grassroots up. Supporting men and boys doesn't always mean grand gestures. Often it means a simple conversation and the courage to role model emotional openness. Today's episode explores the intersection between mental health and palliative care, knowing that about 40% of people diagnosed with a life-limiting illness will experience mood and associated anxiety disorders. A reminder that whether we're talking about mental health or end-of-life care, healing often begins with the most important part of it all, communication. And that's exactly what Kai Fella is all about, a Western Australian charity dedicated to improving mental health and well-being of young people through open conversation, early intervention, and education. And my guest today is Matt. Welcome.
Howdy, how we doing?
I'm doing very well, Matt. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in Kai Fella.
Of course. Yeah, it's a very deep story of my life and how I've gotten to this point. But I'd say to sum it up in a little thumbnail would be that I struggled to speak my voice and speak my truth when I was a young man, and it led to me going through some mental health struggles and yeah, times of really losing my identity and not particularly thinking that I had the courage to have conversations and reach out to friends. So through my time, I've studied psychology. I'm a breathwork facilitator, and I've really always had the dream of being able to run workshops in schools and have open conversations, especially with young men, around the challenges of being a young man in this day and age, and giving them the tools to potentially speak up, find their courage, and live a life that's authentic to them without having to go through the periods of suffering and struggling that I think so many young men quite clearly do.
Mm. Thank you for being so open off the bat, Matt. That's really
Totally.
commendable of you. Can I ask about how Kai Fella, for people that aren't familiar with the charity, how it came to be?
Of course, of course. So yeah, it's a big story, but in 2016, Claire, our founder, her son Kai, took his life, and yeah, he had all the traditional kind of services in place. He was a footy player, he had a girlfriend, he was popular, he was well liked in his community. And the one thing that Claire says he did not have was the ability to openly speak with his peers and to ask for help. So Claire, about 7 years ago now, I think it was 9 years ago, started the foundation as a fundraising body to fundraise for different charities to run workshops and education around WA. And about 2 years ago now, Kai Fella created our own workshops where we now run women's and men's workshops all over the state. Been to Karratha, been down to Esperance, and yeah, I guess the whole story is derived from a young man who lacked the ability to speak up about his problems. And now Claire, who is one of the most amazing women that I've ever met in my life, wants to carry this forward and carry Kai's legacy forward. So other young men and young people in general don't have to go through this really challenging time in their lives. So for me, as someone that's just been a part of this organization, now it's absolutely commendable, and I'm inspired by the legacy that she's built through Kai Fella and the work that we get to do in honor of Kai and also in honor of all the other young people that have lost their life to suicide.
You mentioned running some of your workshops there in regional areas, Matt. Do the needs or the challenges that some of the young people face, are they different from a metropolitan perspective to a regional or remote perspective?
I mean, I think these days with social media, it's all very interconnected. But there are definitely some things that are different. They don't particularly get services, or the ability to speak out, and maybe the stereotypes around them could be a little bit stronger. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've been facilitating now for about 5 months, and through my 5 months, I've seen every single workshop be completely different. And I wouldn't even put that down to whether it's regional, whether it's metro, whether it's private, whether it's public. It really does depend on how the boys show up and the girls show up, but how the young people show up. And yeah, I wouldn't particularly say that I've noticed a difference just yet, but I think stereotypically there would be. But young people are very smart and very switched on. I think, as I said before, with the interconnectedness of social media, some of these stereotypes and things can actually make their ways around the place faster now than just word of mouth. Yeah.
And Matt, can I ask you, with this year's theme being supporting men and boys, what does it mean to you?
Totally. It means to me supporting, first of all, the young version of myself that lives inside of me. That's always first and foremost for me. And being able to offer the space for other young men to also have that experience. It's a question that, seems straightforward, but really what I want to do is to create spaces that young men can openly have conversations about things that are going on for them. Because I think that very classically, men haven't had that. And well, young people in general haven't had that, but we'll speak to men, obviously, being the topic of today's conversation. Yeah, I think that I really just want to, as I said before, create the space for open conversations for all people, because I think the inability to speak up clearly does impact our health and well-being in so many different areas. So if I can, in some way, shape, or form, try to help these young boys make change for themselves and impact each other by the way they share their stories, and that is my goal, is to create the space and to lead as much as I can for these boys to find the answers for themselves, because they do have the answers.
What have you seen when you've gone into school and you've delivered a workshop? What have you seen different in the communication between young people?
Mm. I mean, there's a lot of taking the piss out of each other. They absolutely love to have a go. They absolutely love to deflect and everything like that. And again, I was completely the same. So with our workshops, we kind of use that energy and we harness it. We try to allow them to actually come to the conclusion themselves that they maybe need to stop doing that so much, rather than explicitly going in there and telling them that. We use, yeah, different types of techniques to help them understand for themselves that maybe what they're doing isn't actually as productive for them as they realize. But they're very profound. I often talk about the profound things that I've heard 15-year-old boys say when given the space to do so. So, it can be 1 minute we're talking about brain rot, the next minute we're talking about the most profound thing that I've ever heard in my whole entire life. And it's like that balance, and so that like the difference between those two things is obviously very dramatic, but in the middle there, I think, is a space that's really authentic, real, and it shows that they are listening and that they hear. There's so many conversations around men's mental health and mental health. Whenever we walk in, you're like, I hope you're not just going to talk at us for an hour or for an hour and a half, 2 hours straight. And who would want that? Like sometimes, especially as a young man, they're being told this so much. So I think the difference with our workshops is we give them the space to figure out the answers for themselves. And the main thing that I hear at the end of the workshops is, I love that way more than I thought I was going to, or I really didn't think that you were going to actually let us kind of speak to our own truths, because I think they do expect when someone comes in for 2 hours, we're going to be lectured at 2 hours just to talk about these different things, which has its place totally. And I think it's just beautiful to give the boys a space to actually figure out the answers for themselves.
And meet them where they're at.
Totally use their language, listen to what they're saying, reflect back what they're saying, what I'm hearing, and it really does allow them to, as I said, find the answers for themselves, because change doesn't particularly happen unless we want it to, as the individual or as the collective kind of culture in a school. So I could go in there and tell them my whole entire story, what I did, what I didn't do, how I've gotten to where I am now, but the only way they're going to want to change is if they actually decide to themselves. And I think by reflecting their own behavior and being able to have open conversations with each other, that's been a really profound way for them to do so that I've noticed so far.
I prior to my role here with Cancer Council, I've done a few jobs in my time, Matt, but at one point in time I worked in community health. I was based in high schools, and my role was trying to get young people connected with community services, normally around alcohol and drug or mental health. And you are right. I think if you go into these schools and you have a bit of humble pie and you don't mind being the butt of a few jokes, you can really have some authentic connection with these young people. And fun, I think, is the other thing. What teenagers can really be is really fun and energizing to be around.
Totally.
Have you had any aha moments that you've noticed in any of the young people you're dealing with?
I mean, yeah, hearing boys share things that they would have never, else had the opportunity to do so. Like young men speaking up about how they've been suffering with body image issues, which is something that's been very typically a female kind of a thing that we've seen in the past. And for myself, that's what my biggest struggle was growing up, having an eating disorder and really struggling with my body image. It's been, I guess, a full circle moment to now when I'm in these moments holding space for a kid speaking up about his body image issues. I feel like everything that has happened to me in my life made sense. And every tool that I had and every ability that I had to ask the right questions and really hold the space, yeah, it made it all worth it for me. So yeah, just that for starters, and hearing young men speak to, you know, not having felt anything for years past since family members had been lost, and then afterwards coming up to me and saying that was the first time that I really felt my emotions in 4 years. And just to hear that is, that's exactly what I'm doing this work for. That's exactly why, even if it's only one boy out of 100, um, that's the difference maker. Those are the ones we need to try to help, to save, and to build a better culture. So maybe I've had a many aha moments, and I feel very grateful for that. And I also try to realize that I'm planting seeds at the same time. These aha moments are beautiful, and they happen a lot, and I'm very grateful for them. And I also realize that I hope that it reflects to them an ability to, like, once you become aware of something, it's quite hard to put it back away. So by sharing my story and hopefully these boys sharing their stories over time, I hope that when the time does come, they have to have a courageous conversation, as we call it, supporting a mate. They will think back to the time of, oh, I practiced this in a Kai Fellow workshop, or there's one tiny thing that stuck with me that this person said. That's the kind of moments that I'm really hoping we see the change. Like, these aha moments are beautiful, as I said. And also, this is a long game. We're trying to build a better society, better young people as a whole. And I think the more people out there that have these tools that we try to teach them, and an ability to potentially speak up, even if it's only 5% more, I think that could be the difference maker. And it would have been for me and many of my friends that I had growing up. So yeah.
What do you think stops young people from having these conversations where they show some vulnerability?
Totally. I think there's a lot of shame, and there's a lot of judgment that I think shows up. There's a perceived burden that sharing difficult things with each other will have on the other person. I hear it all the time, and I ask the group, I'm like, who feels burdened by what this young man just shared? And no one puts their hand up. So those moments of like, oh, actually, it doesn't affect me as much as it affects the person that it's going through, that's going through it. Sorry. It's that same thing of a problem shared, a problem halved. It's not actually, I'm not taking on everything that you've just told me. It really is an opportunity for us to go through this together. And I think when they realize that, and when they realize that the words they use to describe each other are courageous, brave, ballsy, they always seem to go with that for some reason. But to be called that as a young man, I think that's what we're all kind of going for. We love to be brave, we love to be courageous, and when it's associated with being vulnerable or sharing emotions, I think that's where the shift can really happen, because some way, shape, or form down the line, we've been told that sharing our emotions isn't what we do. The stereotype is, whether we agree with it or not, it's there. I've felt it. I'm sure we've all felt it in some way, shape, or form, to have to, not share our emotions and step up and be the provider and all these things, which are great. And they're not necessarily all bad things, but when we can start to break them down and see them for what they really are, um, it gives these young men an opportunity to practice being more than just that, more than just uh, the stereotype says. Like, how can we embody being that sometimes? And then also, if I need to, I'm going to be emotional with my friends. That's what we're trying to do.
And Matt, how did you get to a point in which you feel comfortable being so open?
Mm. I'd say practice. A point, I mean, one point speaks specifically. I moved here to Perth about 2.5 years ago now, and just before I left, I shared with my parents what had been going on for me since I was a young boy, and no one particularly knew about it. I'd been going through it and suffering on my own. So that was a pretty big moment for me to really open up and share vulnerably about how I was actually going. I remember my body was shaking and felt really uncomfortable. But since then, I think the more I've been around spaces that invite courage and invite the ability to speak up openly. I'm a part of some great communities, a men's community here in Perth. It's been a massive help for me, I guess, fostering this skill. Um, jumping on podcasts and sharing my story more often and speaking to friends and just being able to sit with the feelings that come up when that story does be shared. And it's not perfect, but I definitely have gotten to the point now that I know that this is stuff that I've worked on and this is stuff that I feel comfortable sharing, especially given what impact it could have on other people. Um, and again, like we say it to the boys, like we have a speed dating aspect of the workshop where the boys get to quickly go through and ask deeper questions. And at the start, they all think it's super awkward, it's super clunky, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, who thinks that was awkward? Everyone puts their hand up, and then by the end of it, I'm like, who thought that got less awkward as the time went on? Every single hand goes up. So it's that thing of practicing skills. Um, it's the same as going to the gym. If you want to get bigger biceps, you go to the gym consistently, and you will end up getting stronger. It's the same with our mental capacity and our ability to be vulnerable and courageous. So for me, it's been practice. And that's why I also know that when I am telling these boys to practice these conversations, it's coming from a place of real embodied truth that these conversations sometimes are still awkward for me, but far less awkward than they were before. And I really feel a lot more capable to support mates through challenging times, because at the end of the day, life is going to keep going and things are going to happen. I think it's what we tell the boys, even if you aren't going through something now, either yourself, your family, a friend, like things are going to happen that will need us to be there and support people through challenging moments. So yeah, for me, it's been that journey, and to be able to now give that from straight experience it makes me feel like my story is needed rather than it being me sharing from a place of just dumping on people. It has a purpose, and every
Mm.
story that I bring into the workshop has a purpose, and it has a reason for why I bring it in. So that's kind of been a journey of understanding it to that level for myself.
Tell me a little bit about these workshops. What do they look like? What happens in them besides the speed dating? What else goes on in them?
Totally. So yeah, as soon as we get in, we really harness their energy. So usually they're full of energy, full of banter, and we ask them a pretty funny question to get the workshop started. So with workshop one, it is, would you prefer that your internet browsing history, including incognito mode, go public to the whole entire school, or would you prefer that's exactly the reaction that we get, or would you prefer your group chats, including DMs, Snapchats, whatever kind of messages you've been sending, also go public to the school, and then give them a moment to speak to the person next to them and come up with an answer of what they would prefer. And I think from then onwards, they're like, okay, this isn't a regular mental health workshop. He's allowing us to be funny and playful and silly. And I really do, and we all do, give them a bit of leash and let them go with it. And when we bring them back, I share that I've also been a 15-year-old boy, and I know what it feels like to have search histories that I want to hide and group chats that I might not want everyone in the school to see. And I think when we can kind of share those experiences together, it allows them to really, it allows a safety to be created. Like, okay, he's not a teacher, and also he understands what we're going through. Um, and yeah, that's kind of the start of the workshop. And we get to a point where we go through statistics. We write down what the stereotype looks like, um, all from their words and their answers. We write down a list of what they enjoy talking about, and these lists can get quite rogue. They can get quite full of laughter and fun. But again, using the language and allowing them to, I guess, see that the stereotype does exist. Um, and the most profound part of the workshop is when a young man is given the opportunity to come up to the front of the room and share on how one of the statistics on mental health for men has impacted him in his life. And it's an opportunity that I feel very grateful to, first of all, honor and watch, and also to help him kind of formulate an answer in real time. And when that happens, the boys are silent. They are really in awe. And as I said to you before, the words they come up with are courageous. ballsy and inspirational. And then from that point onwards, there's really been a depth and a cracking of the stereotype. Maybe not gone forever, but a real moment of like, like there is room here for something else. And I think all the boys can feel that. Like when a peer gets up there, I ask, what do you guys think of him? And as I said before, those are the words that come up. And who else would also struggle to get up there? Every single hand goes up, and it's not something that is easy to do. But that young man is really a leader, and to acknowledge that being courageous and a leader doesn't just mean being good at footy. It doesn't just mean having the best grades. It doesn't mean, being the best looking guy in the room. It actually means being open and modeling a behavior that all of us really need. And one of my most favorite questions that I ask the boys is, who wants to be there for their mates? Every single hand goes up. And then I ask, who actually knows what's going on below the surface for their mates? All the hands go down, bar one or two. So we've said that we want to be there for our mates, but we don't know what's going on for them. Like that right there speaks volumes, because we've just said that's what we want to do. And then we get to the point where we practice speed dating, get them to ask vulnerable questions, like when was the last time you cried? Who's someone in your life that's courageous? What are you proud of and why? And they get an opportunity to really face to face sit down with someone they may or may not have spent time with and practice asking these questions. So that's kind of how workshop one goes. We have three workshops that we run through, but I think that one speaks really deeply to what we do as Kai Fella. Yeah.
And when you get feedback from the school, what kind of changes do they see?
Of course. I mean, the schools love us. We have had almost 100% rebooking rate from every single school that has booked us, which has been amazing. And they just notice a real difference in the way that we operate. And as I said before, it's not like we are trying to create the space, but we're not hoping that. Actually, we are hoping, but we know that the stereotype isn't going to remove itself straight away. We're not going to go in there and be like, cool, now all the boys speak about their emotions every single moment of every single day. But what we do notice from the teachers that do bring us back is that there is a huge amount of value in the amount of, I think, respect for themselves and other people. It really gives them an insight into the fact that other people are also going through the same thing that I am. So more open conversations. And yeah, it's also interesting because we're in there for 2 hours and then we don't really see them again. We have services and we have the school staff that we link them on to further. So that actually for me is one of the hardest parts of the job, is kind of really being there with these boys and feeling the emotions and really like holding the space, and then realizing that I now have to go and I probably won't get too much contact with these boys. So I guess it is just hoping and a quiet knowing that these boys now have a tool to navigate life in a way that's going to work for them, because boys aren't going to be perfect. They're still going to do some dumb stuff. They're still going to take risks. They still might be awkward in these conversations, but I do know that they will take something away that will be handy and beneficial for them at some point in their life.
I was going to ask you about strength, Matt. Initially, I was going to ask you about David Mundy, one of your board members, but I understand that you have quite an athletic career yourself. And I want to know the correlation, or is there a relationship between vulnerability and strength, and how can that fit into it as opposed to being seen as the opposite? As vulnerability is a weakness and strength is something to be admired. How can they become level?
I mean, I think that's a question that could be answered in many different ways. But I think that if we can start to see them in the same light, start to see them as two sides of the same coin, that real strength is opening up and being courageous and leading from the front. I think it's not just these stereotypical ways of being athletic and having things figured out like everyone thinks that we do. I think that was probably one of the reasons as to why no one ever knew what was going on for me, was because my identity seemed so solid from the outside that I wasn't actually allowing people to see what was also there for me. And now, as I kind of move through my life and still do some things that are really, really amazing and allow me to be a leader and someone that is seen as strong and courageous, I've noticed that being vulnerable hasn't hindered me at all in that process. All it's done is help me. So um, I can't speak for anyone else in that aspect, but I know that for myself, my ability to be honest and courageous and share vulnerably my truth in times that it's needed um, has really made me feel stronger and made me feel more like a man, which is so counterintuitive to what the stereotype says. It says if we do these things, we're not strong and we're weak, and that's not what people want from us. But I think that's a lie. I think that is a lie, and we, as men, have an opportunity, especially with so much support and conversations going around at the moment, to really step up and to see what it looks like to embody both those things at the same time, and maybe even blend them into one.
And Matt, I want to ask around, how can parents, families, how can they connect to someone that is of a different generation with them? How can they
Mm,
be there for young people, as though as Kai Fella can go into schools and be there for young people? How can people have that availability when there is generational or gender differences? Or
totally. Yeah. I mean, I think the answer to that question is curiosity. Um, Curiosity and patience, and allowing someone to walk their own path. Obviously there are times that um, parents, like, safety is the optimal thing, right? As a parent looking after a young person, and I can only speak from this from the conversations that I've had from my parents. I don't have a child myself, but looking after a child is the ultimate part of being a parent. But I think when it comes to these conversations and things that are around mental health or conversations that seem difficult, curiosity is really the only way that we can move through these conversations. I believe that we as humans make assumptions a lot of the time, and I also include myself in that conversation. So the more I've been curious in my life, and the more I've been able to ask the right questions and really just try to understand and create connection for the people that are in front of me, um, that's the way that I would say would create space for safer conversations. Again, as I said before, I am not a parent, and I'm sure that when I am a parent, I will be faced with an extremely complicated task ahead of me, and maybe this advice won't help me at all. But I think that in some way, shape, or form, whether it's with a child or a brother or an uncle or a father or whatever it is, a little bit more curiosity is not going to hurt at all. Just to understand where the person's coming from, why they think the way that they do, what's leading to this behavior. There's so many different questions that we can ask, and that's one of the things we teach the young boys is, and this the speed dating is, how do we ask good questions? And they say open-ended questions. Beautiful. If we're asking questions like, is that water bottle blue? Yes, no. Like, why is the water bottle blue? Like, does that blue have a different place that it's come from? Like, there's, again, it's so applicable to all different areas of life. And I think that the more we can be curious and ask questions, we're going to at least know more information and then be able to support the person that's in front of us far better than what we assumed so in the first place.
that's a really good example, Matt. I was just thinking of how you ask someone how they're doing, and the default answer is always good. It's not explorative, you're not curious, you're not trying to find out anymore. It's very superficial, very surface level.
Totally.
It was like a tick box exercise. It's not
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to be there for them and with them.
Yeah. I remember one thing that my dad taught me is, if you really want to know how someone is, you ask twice. And I think that's a really just amazing way to look at it, because as you said before, and I notice it all the time, how you doing? Yeah, good, thanks. That's just it's a greeting. It's not even a
Mm.
question in Australian culture. It's a way of just greeting someone. So if you really want to know, you ask twice.
What kind of change would you like to see across communities, schools, governments? What would you like to
Mhm.
see next?
I mean, I really do believe that this type of work needs to be more deeply integrated into the curriculum for these young people. These are such important skills and yeah, areas of life that need developing. Um, And I think that, yeah, just obviously there are things like maths and science and things that are all great and all help a lot. And I'm not saying that we need to take these things away, but there are problems that we are blaming young people for that I think we aren't actually giving them the space to learn the skills to remedy these situations. There are so many negative things that happen, so many negative outlooks on young men and young women, the way they interact with social media, the way that they speak, maybe the way that they show up in this world in general. And we're not giving them the space to actually know how to do that stuff. We assume that they know what to do. We assume that they have the answers themselves. And again, I'm in no way saying that we need to take things away that are there, because it's all important. And I also just think honest, real conversations about struggles, hearing stories from other people is just going to allow the young people to have a better experience and a better go at life, knowing they actually have a bit more of a rule book and a bit of a playbook on how to actually operate this world that we live in. Because this digital era is very, very complicated. And I speak from that as a 25-year-old that also knows that I struggle with my phone and going on social media and, setting boundaries with it. So I'm not sure how a young person, 13, 14, 15, 16, that must be a completely different experience. So, in short, giving them more spaces to have open and real conversations with each other and making that dialogue a bit more standard. I think that the work that we do is amazing, but it would be so great if this wasn't even work to do. It was just part of life. Part of life is having these conversations and being curious. And I think that we are a way off doing that, but that's the way that I think in the future things could change. And at the same time, Kai Fellow will keep doing our work, and I am very grateful to be able to do that. I feel like it's what I've been put on this planet to do, which feels amazing. So just going with the flow, but I think that the change that I want to see is already happening. The change that I want to see is in motion, and I'm part of creating it. Like, these things weren't happening in schools 8 years ago when I was in school. There was one guy that came in and talked to us about uh, the potentials of doing drugs and smoking cigarettes and bullying, and it was one facilitator to like 200 of us in a hall. One is listening. And with our workshops, we have a max of 35 boys in the room or girls, and you can't hide in a room like that. Whereas if you're in a room with 200 people, it's so easily hide and not listen. But I think giving young people a space to challenge themselves and speak up, even if they don't want to, the smaller the rooms, the more space each young person has to potentially make a difference and a choice that could change theirs or their friends' lives.
What's next for Kai Fella, and how can
Totally. Honestly, more workshops. That's what's next for Kai Fella. Working on grants. We've been applying for different grants and fundings. More regional tours, going back to Karratha, potentially more. We really feel called to working in WA and in all different schools. And sometimes money can be an issue for schools running these workshops. So I guess the more funding that we can get, the more awareness that we can get of what we're doing, the more grants, that helps us run workshops for people that need it the most. It's often the people that need it the most are the ones that can't afford it. And I think that is true, so true in this society that we live in. So the way people can support us, we have a ball in May next year, which is our biggest fundraising event for our year, our main fundraising event, where we have a mental health night for Kai Fella, speaking about our stories, videos are shared, activities, and a real space for people to connect over stories that impact everyone. Everyone in some way, shape, or form has been impacted by mental health. You don't have to look too far to see the impact that it has. So that's a way people can help us, linking us in with people that want to support what we do, finding schools that are interested in what we do. We have so many amazing advocates in different schools around WA and sports clubs and things like that. So the more people we can have that we can have supporting us and also support them, because everyone wants to make a difference in some way, shape, or form. So we are about not just making impact ourselves, but also empowering other people that want to support us, how they can make impact too. So I think the more that we're together, connected, and doing amazing things, I hope that the change that I want to see and we want to see will happen.
Matt, you're one of the most self-aware people that I think I've ever met in my life. You are like a walking Buddha, you know, you're just a walking, talking encyclopedia of knowledge and wisdom. It's been really great for me to get to meet you and get to talk to you about this. And sincerely, I wish Kai Fella all the best with all of your activity going forth. And in any way that we can support and promote and endorse your program, don't be a stranger. We're happy to reach out and happy to help.
Thank you so much for, yeah, first of all, saying that. I appreciate. It's always nice to hear the work that I've done be acknowledged by someone else. I know that the work I do is for me, and it's an amazing to hear that it actually does have an impact. So thank you for that, and thank you for supporting Kai Fella and having us on this podcast. Yeah, we work with young men and young women too. So I know we've had a large conversation here about the men, but the work we do with young women too is absolutely profound as well. So just wanting to give them their flowers because they do amazing work, and yeah, and everyone in the Kai Fella Foundation is amazing, is heart-centered, is aware, and it's doing this work because it's impacted them personally. And I think that we have a beautiful, amazing team. So shout out to the team, and yeah, yourself for getting me on here. And yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and to speak about these topics because quite clearly we both have a passion about it. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.